Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope we've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crimes Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Today is another video in my mini-series, Did They Do It? When someone is serving time in prison, but their guilt is questionable. In this video, I'll be discussing the murder of Devon and Damon Routier. Their mother, Darlie, has been spending at least 22 years in prison for their murders. Literally, she's only been convicted of killing her son Damon, but people still believed she killed her son Devon as well. But there are people who believe that she's completely innocent of the murders. As I was researching this case, there were some points that made her seem guilty, but there were some points that made her seem innocent as well. This is a tragic yet insane case that I'm about to cover. Because of how insane this is, I advise you to do your own research after watching this video. I'm gonna start this video by explaining how this family came to be. Here we go. Darlie Routier was actually born as Darlie Key on January 4th, 1970. Darlie was actually, I believe that she was named after her mother, since her mother's name is also Darlie. People have described Darlie as someone who is fun-loving, giving, caring, somewhat materialistic, and social. She met someone named Darren Routier when she was 15. The two began to date shortly after. She married Darren when she was 18 and Darren was 20. 9 months after their marriage, she gave birth to their first son, Devon, on June 14th, 1989. Shortly after Devon's birth, Darren started his own company called Tesney Electronics, which made circuit boards. Not long after the company was built, it would become pretty successful. On February 19th, 1991, Darlie gave birth to her second son, Damon. Because of the business's success, Darren would pretty much spoil Darlie, like on cars and vacation trips. They bought a pretty nice house, which was a hangout spot for friends and family. Overall, the family was enjoying their wealth. Before the boys were killed, Devon was described as an active, funny, playful, someone who loved swimming, music, video games, a boy who was loving and protective of his little brothers. Damon, on the other hand, was the opposite of his outgoing, energetic older brother. People have described Damon as someone who was quiet, didn't want to be in a place by himself, and loved being coddled. By June 6, 1996, Darlie and Darren had another son named Drake. Since it was summer, Damon and Devon wanted to sleep downstairs with their mom instead of in their own room, while Darren was asleep with Drake upstairs. Unfortunately, this is when the story would take a drastic, tragic turn, and the Routier's life would never be the same again. The next thing Darlie claims to remember is being woken up by her second son, Damon, who pressed on her shoulder, calling to her. She said to have sat straight up, then saw a white man in dark clothing walking from her. By that time, her neck was slit with a knife. She mentioned how she didn't really remember what occurred that night. She believes that she fought with this intruder and he knocked her out. After being woken up, she says to have heard glass break, then walked over to the kitchen. Darlie noticed a knife which was filled with blood on the ground, then for some reason picked it up. Darlie said to have noticed Devon laying face up. Darlie flipped the lights, then screamed for Darren. Darren ran down the stairs and said to have seen Darlie screaming for their oldest son, Devon. Darlie called the police. Both boys were unresponsive while Darren was performing CPR. In the call, Darlie was heard telling the boys to hold on. Darlie, Devon, and Damon were rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, Damon, who was 5 years old, was pronounced dead once he arrived, and Devon, who was 6, passed on as well. Darlie had surgery with life-threatening cuts and injuries on her body. Police began to investigate, and they did investigate the house. They noticed a cut screen in the garage, found bloody footprints and fingerprints. At the beginning, the public and police seemed to have been on Darlie's side. Views on Darlie would change 8 days after the murders, when Devon would have been 7. It would have been his 7th birthday. Darlie, Darren, and loved ones had this small birthday party at Devon's gravesite. Before the murders, a birthday party was planned for Devon, but since he and Damon were no longer here, there was no way to celebrate. But Darlie's mother believed it was a good idea to still celebrate Devon's birthday. Darlie and another person, I believe to be her sister, I'm just not 100% sure, were spraying silly string at the gravesite. This type of behavior made a lot of people raise eyebrows. People were wondering why this mother, who brutally lost her babies, would be having this celebration at least a week after the murders. Here's what I gotta say. I am not a parent. If God ever blesses me with a family, I hope they would all be safe. I'm not sure how I'd react if I've ever lost my child in such a brutal way, and of course I'm absolutely devastated, but everyone does grieve differently. Whether I would spray silly string a week after my child's been brutally murdered, like, I doubt I would do that in the first place, but everyone is different. Overall, having a birthday party for your dead son and spraying silly string doesn't make anybody a murderer. From what I've gathered, the boys did enjoy playing with silly string. Bringing silly string wasn't even Darlie's idea in the first place either. It was actually her sister's idea, and Darlie's sister was the one who brought the silly string. What people didn't know is that a couple of hours before this birthday party for Devon, there was this memorial service for the boys. Those who took part of this memorial service were in tears at the gravesite instead of, having this birthday, having a blast, I guess, for this birthday party for Devon. What no one at the memorial service knew was that they were being recorded by investigators, which is something I will discuss later on in the video. After the video of this birthday party was released to the public, Darren and Darlie got a call from police. The couple believed that the police got leads to whoever killed their sons. Darlie's mother asked if they should bring a lawyer with them, but since the couple claimed innocence, they stated how they didn't need one because they were innocent from what they had said, which would prove to be a huge mistake on their part. Darren and Darlie were caught by surprise when they charged Darlie with murder, which baffled families and friends who received the news while watching the news on TV. And I can't imagine how that would feel, receiving the news about a loved one in that way. Police didn't believe the story of this white man in dark clothing was real, and that they believed that Darlie harmed herself. And to me, if Darlie did in fact kill those boys, then it must have been a failed suicide attempt. Like, the injuries she had were like an inch away from taking her life. Like, honestly, this is the part in the case which baffles me. Yes, there are people who believe she did it because she's still alive and her boys aren't. But when you are at least an inch closer to death and taking your own life, like, why take such a risk when your intention is to get out of this situation alive? Like, to me, it just doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really make much sense to me, unless she truly is some psychopath or sociopath. Darren and the rest of the family did believe in Darlie's innocence. People began to take sides. Some believed Darlie was innocent, but there were people who didn't. Prosecutors and investigators listened into the 911 call, and what made her sound guilty to them was hearing Darlie worry about her fingerprints on the knife, which can seem sketchy. Like, your boys are pretty much dying in front of you and you're worrying about your fingerprints on the murder weapon. Also, in the call, the 911 operator did tell Darlie not to touch anything. This is when Darlie said she realized she touched a piece of evidence, which is why she made the fingerprint statement. Prosecutors stated that someone couldn't have entered through the slashed window without disturbing the dust, but with the size of the window, it was possible to just walk through without disturbing the dust. On the day of the murder, a Routier neighbor noticed a black car outside of the house. And not only, this wasn't even the first time either. Like 7 or 8 days prior, the same car was outside looking at the Routier house. When the neighbor approached this car, the car sped off. There was also this sock outside of the house down the alley. It had Darlie, Devon, and Damon's blood on it. Prosecutors believed that she walked all the way down the alley, which was like 75 yards away from her house, placed the sock on the floor, then went back home. I mean, this could be true, but Darlie would have had to been really stupid to have done all this. Like, why not get rid of the sock altogether? Because of all the craziness going on with Darlie being charged with the boy's murder, Drake was placed in foster care, but Darren's parents would file and gain temporary custody of the boy. Eventually, he'd be placed in Darren's care again. So the trial began, and it was moved to a smaller town in Texas called Kerrville instead of Dallas because the judicial system believed it would have been a fair trial in a smaller and more stern community. Local residents did, in fact, flood the courthouse. Attorney Doug Mulder defended Darlie, but unfortunately, he had like 2 weeks to prepare, which I don't agree is right with such a huge case like this, but he felt confident in winning. Instead of coming up with a clear motive, prosecutors pretty much assassinated Darlie's character because of the lavish lifestyle she lived. But living a lavish lifestyle doesn't make anyone a killer. Prosecutors brought up that the Routiers did have financial issues and had a strained marriage. Once again, that doesn't really make anyone a killer. According to the Routiers, it wasn't unusual for Darren's business to be slow at times, and the couple claimed to have been very much in love. Prosecutors believed Darlie wanted the boys gone because she would have gained financial freedom. Like, yeah, kids can be expensive, but obviously that's no reason to kill them. But Darlie and her family have stated how she loved her kids and how involved she was in their lives. Prosecutors brought up this letter, a suicide letter to be exact, which was written at least a month before the murders. Darlie did deal with some form of postpartum depression after giving birth to her youngest son, Drake. While she was writing this suicide note, she felt like killing herself just wasn't worth it. And other pages in the journal did state how she wanted to see her boys grow up. And of course, this isn't a surprise. The knife was brought up in trial, which was the kitchen knife and had particles that belonged to the garage screen door. So the defense stated how it was possible that the evidence could have been contaminated while police were investigating, but prosecutors are saying, this is pretty much impossible. Like, no way that somebody could have just entered into the house when, using the Routier's kitchen knife. But the defense lost some points on that evidence because they decided not to bring a forensic expert to back this up like the prosecutors did. The first responder, whose name was David Waddell, was put on stand, and he was even interviewed on television, stating how Darlie didn't do anything to help the boys when he arrived to the house the night of the murder. But Darren states how it was Officer Waddell who didn't do anything to help the boys. So it's pretty much a this person said, that person said type situation. The two investigators who recorded the private memorial service before the whole birthday party for Devon, they were placed on stand and they were questioned about the recording. But, to everyone's surprise, they actually pled the fifth, which seems pretty sketchy to me. Like, why plead the fifth when you're so sure that you've got the right person for the crime? Like, when Darlie was placed on stand, she slowly became irritated and defensive, which didn't work in her favor at all. Darlie would be found guilty for Damon's death, and I'm still confused as to why she was never tried for Devon's death, but if you have any clue, please feel free to leave that in the comments section. And she would be sentenced to death and placed on death row until her time is up. Darlie and Darren have been divorced, but he still believes Darlie is innocent. Drake, her youngest son, still visits her in prison from time to time. There have been appeals to get Darlie out of prison before her death sentence. There are just so many theories with this case. Like I said, there are people who believe Darlie's guilty, and there are others who believe that she's completely innocent. People believe that Darren might have been involved in Devon and Damon's death. Either he had a hand in it in himself or had hired someone to do it. Once again, there was this fingerprint in the house, which didn't belong to investigators or anyone in the Routier family. So my question is, like, who does this fingerprint belong to? There was this black vehicle that a neighbor saw sitting outside of the house. Like, why would the stranger show up to the house not long before the murders? Was this a robbery gone wrong? Like, is this an example of lazy investigation? Do you believe Darlie's innocent, or do you believe that she's guilty and just some psychopath or sociopath who speaks like an innocent person? Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. Overall, whether Darlie is innocent or not, two beautiful boys lost their lives in such a gruesome way. If Darlie's guilty, then those two got justice. But what if she's not guilty? Like, that means that the killer could still be out there somewhere, and she could be killed for a crime she never committed. Like, my prayer is for the truth to just be out there. The Bible says in Luke chapter 8, verse 17, "For nothing is secret that shall not be manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." If Darlie is guilty, God knows, and I would hope that she would confess if she is in fact guilty. If Darlie did in fact see a man that fateful night, then God knows and will make sure that man pays for killing Devon and Damon. I thank you all so much for taking the time in your day to watch this video. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. Once again, if you have any thoughts about this case, please leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If you'd like me to go ahead and cover a true crime case, please let me know. I'll see y'all next time for True Crime Tuesdays. I'll talk to y'all later.